Okay, we are ready whenever you are.
Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order this month's UIDRB meeting. As a reminder, next month's meeting is Thursday, April 25th at 4 p.m., same location as this. We'll go ahead and swear in staff. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do you second this for planning division?
Thank you. Would you mind calling the roll?
Yes. Mr. Fleming, Ms. Donovan,
Hey, could we mind keeping the conversations down? This is a recorded meeting.
thank you. Ms. Parker? Yep, here, thank you. Mr. Sublette,
Yes.
Mr. Smansky,
Yes.
and Mr. Mather.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Overview of just quick format. We'll have each case and we'll have the opportunity for people to speak on each case. But if there's anyone that would like to address the commission on a general matter or something not specifically on the agenda, now would be your time. Is there anyone that has a general discussion item? Okay. If you do plan to speak for an actual case, if you wouldn't mind beforehand signing in the speaker slips that are back by the TV there by the entrance, so we have a record if you plan to speak on a case. With that, we are not doing the pledge of ethics, correct?
Correct. If I could just do the overview of the hearing form.
Oh.
For
Okay.
So for each case, staff will present the materials and read the staff report, at which point the board will ask any questions of staff. Then we will bring our applicants up, and they will be sworn in and given the opportunity to add any additional information to staff's presentation. The board will then ask questions of the applicant and ultimately take any action on the cases. Thank you.
I think we have the minutes from last month to approve. If everyone's had a chance to review, are there any comments or a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Second.
That was a motion by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Gozelman. Is that correct? You can't see.
Correct.
Yes.
Sorry. All right. Ms. Gozelman,
Yes.
Ms. Parker. Yes. Sublette,
Yes.
Mr. Smansky,
Yes.
and Mr. Mather.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Perfect. I think we're to new applications, and our first application for today is UID 24-03-007. Stephanie, you want to do the staff report?
Thank you. Application UID 24-03007 for 314 King Avenue. The applicant is requesting review and action on exterior building alterations that would result in the enclosure of a rear second-story porch. The submission includes existing condition photos, site plans, elevations, material specifications, and an inspirational image. I'll scroll through those quickly. Here's an existing condition photo of the rear of the house. We have some more close-up detailed photos of that second-story porch. Here are the elevations provided. And we have our site plan here. And then this is the inspirational image of what that second story enclosure will look like. It will be similar to what has been enclosed on the first story. And this is just showing, again, how those materials will look. So with that, after review, the proposal is generally inconsistent with plan recommendations. The University District Plan recommends that character defining and original features be maintained. The proposal would substantially alter the second story porch element, which while on the rear of the home is visible from Pennsylvania Avenue. Staff recommends continuing the application to allow the applicant the opportunity to explore an alternate design that minimizes the removal of character defining and original features. Thank you.
Is there any board discussion before we have the applicant step forward? If the applicant wouldn't mind coming forward. Yeah, you, just the table there. And if you don't mind stating your name and affiliation and allow me to swear you in.
I'm Colt Lovejoy with JSP Home Solutions.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to add before the question?
So essentially what we're looking to do is just enclose the upstairs porch that you can see there, using the same design elements with the posts that are there existing. Basically, it's just essentially cutting them in half and putting them, mounting them just like we have down below. So it remains the same essentially. It's just filling it in.
You would be removing the railings.
Correct.
Any questions from that? Or
But you'd keep the color the same?
Of the posts, correct. And the upstairs, it'd be the same color as what's down below.
And then it looks like these windows open, is that correct?
Yes.
Slide?
I wonder if is it possible for staff to comment on your recommendation?
Yeah, so our recommendation was just based on the plan guidance about maintaining the historic and original character defining features. So, to Laura's point, like that railing would be removed. So I don't know if that would be our recommendation to continue for maybe, if you all were in agreement to see if there was a way to keep that railing feature, or what have you, just to minimize taking down some of that historic fabric.
was this done on the first floor? Was that railing and everything there on the first floor? Do you have some history?
I believe it was. I wasn't part of the first project.
It's hard to tell. Is that just open on the bottom below, or is that a wing? That's glass down there too.
Yeah. They're glass new walls.
Can I ask something?
We would just need
I
to
just
swear
swear
you
you.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, we just need to swear you in.
Can you state your name and affiliation?
Hi, I'm Pete Kengeter, the owner of the house. And
Let me first swear you in if you don't mind. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes, I do.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem.
This is my first time, so.
No problem.
My name's Pete Kengeter, and I appreciate you looking at this. Owner of the house. About 4 years ago, the top porch and the bottom porch matched. And so we were trying to add a little depth to the bottom porch. So we went before the board and we got approval, and JSB built what you see on the bottom porch. They put a whole new foundation in. They took pillars that we had and put them around the side, as you can see, to bring and maintain the historic look of the house on the back of the house. And we were quite happy with that. And as the years went by, the top porch is now falling off. The posts are rotten. The railing is, you lean against it and it falls. So we have to either take it down or do something. And so we thought, why don't we contact them again and see if we can just mimic what we put down below and put up on the second floor, but not adding any additional space, maintaining the exact square footage, inches, whatever that is presently there.
Yeah, I remember you from the
Yeah.
first time.
Yes.
I thought, yeah, when I saw the project, I thought,
I do like that you're gonna try and utilize the posts again. I think that does keep the, somewhat of the character there. I know that there are those things in between where the posts meet.
Mhm.
I don't know what those are called, but, I'm sorry, but it could be interesting to see if maybe in the design aspect of it, that could be seen. Or you could try and include them or put them on the outside, but the pictures that you gave us just led me to believe that it wasn't gonna keep that same character just from the the photos that were attached, it just made me a little bit, it makes me a little bit weary that that's not the direction that you're going in, so.
I wasn't sure if they were gonna use those corner things, whatever they're called,
Right.
either because of the way as you look down below, the bottom porch had them also, but they couldn't use them because of the way the new enclosures are.
I guess I'm just curious in one question in terms of, you said that the posts are rotted, and so you're having to replace the post, and you're, the thought of just doing that replacement, what's the, I mean, from an architectural standpoint, I get the filling in on the first floor, and I think it looks good on the first floor. The second floor kind of then creates another element that there's two kind of outdoor elements stacking. Why not just replace what's there? If you're replacing the post already, and then you're putting this in, you could keep the railing.
We wanted to enclose it and then be able to use that space year round, that's why. Does that answer your question? The, from what we're told by JSB too, when they build like down below, they need a square post to build.
We need a foundation for it,
Yeah,
to be able to build the room one, which we've done for the first project.
right.
So we have the structural support to be able to do that above.
And the bottom are just posts that are just stuck on
Yeah.
for decoration.
They're not structural posts.
Even with the enclosure, can the railing be salvaged and used just decoratively, even though it would have,
We would have to shrink the footprint of the room. We'd have to basically build it inside of that.
Yes.
can I risk a really informal bit of advice? If you're coming back, we're neighbors. And also in our neighborhood, we have an extraordinary resource of expertise, a couple doors down from you. And you might ask Susan Keeney of Landmarks for advice on,
We asked her when we talked to her when we were first thinking about this, and she thought this would be okay. She pointed out to us if we kept the railing, we wouldn't be able to clean the windows.
I mean,
But you could have a false wall behind the railing and still keep those, still keep the railing and the character of that second level.
Yeah, because
You
it
would
seems
have,
to me,
But that would
I think
block,
on your point, Lori, like, you wouldn't have to keep the literal railing, which is probably not any great shakes anyway.
Mhm.
But if you did like, if the lower wall was opaque and you kept the kind of rhythm of.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think this gets an interesting point, that this is not a historic commission. Correct?
No.
So we're really making judgments about the historical nature of the railing. We don't know if it's original to the
Oh,
house
sure, it's not.
or when it was built, so I feel really shaky making judgment about this submission on those terms. I do agree, though, that maintaining the proportion of what's there is important, and that's about as best as you can do. And this commission has approved this 4 years ago, or at least the first floor 4 years ago, so I'm really hesitant to say no the second time. So to me, this seems acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I recall, you all been here a long time. And when you came before us 4 years ago, it was because you wanted to expand on the house in a way that you could stay here much longer. I mean, I think I guess I'm with Dan on this one. Like, I think there are a couple ways you could do it. I think maybe the application materials don't help your case, and that the drawings are a little basic and probably don't show the exact design intent. But I'm kind of with you, Dan. I could go either way. Like, you could do what Lori said and put a kind of short wall that at least maintains the kind of opaque character and the vertical articulation and glass above. Or you could go much more modern on it and just infill between the posts, maybe replicate the posts and fine.
My reading of this submission is that that's not what they're going for. They're trying to maintain some sort of rhythm that's already there. And so I think the submission is pretty respectful of the existing condition, not trying to blow it out and do something completely modern or out of character.
They're trying to take what's down below and
Right.
replicate it back above.
Well, I would be okay with approving it if you could keep those posts, as you said.
Mhm.
And if you could figure out some way to do something with those cool things, I don't care, even if you put them in your home. That's not something that is a condition that I am moving towards. I just think that they're lovely, so. I would approve, but we're voting on it today, is that correct? Yes. Okay.
How are we confirming the articulation of those posts and any architectural elements and details are being maintained that are not represented in the drawing?
We would need,
I thought he said.
They're clearly not represented in the sketch.
yeah, we would need the drawings to be updated to accurately reflect what the commission would be. And I imagine that would also be a requirement from the building and zoning folks, permitting folks are going to need to see more detailed drawings on this, so.
I thought he had submitted that, but I guess we don't have that.
These, but I don't have actual like elevations that show like retaining those posts.
I pose this question to Lori and Keone a little bit, is if that lower part that's glass there was more solid, kind of where you, that broke it up so that it was different, is that better or worse in your opinion? Because that's the only part that's thinking to me is that you're creating the same thing over it and it kind of feels like it should be a little bit different on the top, but I don't have a strong opinion.
I think there's a functional reason to do that too. Being on the second story, you may not want to be seen from below in totality.
Yeah.
So you may want to have it just be a half or a knee high, an above piece of glass.
I agree with that.
And then that allows that kind of that,
So you're talking more something like this.
Yeah.
more like that allow, and you can have where the holes in those railings would be. It doesn't have to be a literal of exactly that railing, but kind of fit that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, to me, the largest impediment to the submission is probably the quality of the drawings, which I think, as others have observed, don't do a particularly good or accurate job of representing either the existing conditions or the proposed design. In I guess, I suppose in fairness and out of consistency, we probably should get a little better drawings in order to approve the
I
submission.
mean, because even that one there shows that it's perfectly lined
Yeah,
up,
right.
which it's not.
Yeah, it's like a cartoon version.
Right.
That's what I think it's gonna look like.
If you go back to the picture,
It's not some.
those are offset.
The first and second.
Because the bottom porch is we added on to. Yeah, so the bottom porch comes out.
No, like top to bottom, it's offset like this.
Your top porch, they're saying the top porch is slightly narrower than
Inboard.
the bottom porch.
And those,
It really isn't. I mean,
Vertically.
they are exactly lined up.
Yeah, you want to.
What I look that way is because we put an awning on it to cover the steps. But I
can
mean,
you go back to the current picture?
and
I think that angle's throwing it all too.
I don't see how that line, those columns are not lining up the way that.
see right there?
Yeah, on that side, I see on the side, but if you're looking at it from the frontal view, it doesn't really look like they do from the front.
Or does the first story
I
draw?
think it might
Yeah,
be a
they
perspective.
are exactly.
It's a perspective because it's out further, so you're seeing it in it.
And there's a 1 foot overhang on the roof.
Forward,
Yeah.
forward, you know.
I don't know. I'm a photographer and that,
I don't understand.
that doesn't look
I
like
don't
this portion,
understand how-
unfortunately, but.
That right side?
So the right side and the left side, if you look at the picture from the right where you see that picture right there, that's how the other side is. Only there's an awning on the other side.
Yeah, it looks exactly like that.
That's mounted at ledger board.
Left-hand side of the photo, like really throws it off.
And there's the 1 foot overhang from the roof that's outside of the existing.
Yeah,
roof.
So they move the post
Yeah,
in,
but
they're-
it's-
That makes me feel better structurally about the whole thing.
Yes.
yeah, the whole thing is completely.
is it just, they just glued it in a little bit? Is that what? Because those don't look like they.
I don't understand this.
Well, you all have the option and you could vote on it with conditions. And the condition would be that they come back or they be staff approval, or you just continue it. It's just that they trying to provide more detailed drawings.
You can see.
You're saying those are the exact same,
Yeah, I think it's.
So the post itself is actually a split post, it looks like, and one's applied to the face and one's applied to the side. That's why you're seeing it, why it looks wider on that corner.
It doesn't appear to line up. I think even with perspective, I agree with them. There's no way that upper column lines up with the bottom one.
I don't know, the interior picture.
If-
Yeah.
Well,
You can zoom in on the bottom post on it, where the stairwell is, you can actually, right where your arrow is down, you can see where the original
Straight
post
view, perhaps.
still was on the
You
brick.
can't see it. Sort of.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can only see the seconds for the porch.
So I'm wondering, based off of this drawing that we have, if you could, like, I don't know when you're trying to start the project, but if you were to continue this to the next meeting, give us a better drawing, utilizing those posts, kind of showing us and adding in the color, I feel like that would get us where we need to be to show that.
In addition, I'm kind of curious, if you go back to that front view, sorry. You've got that middle post. Obviously in the drawing, there's a middle post. What is that middle post gonna look like?
We'll do the same
Does
thing we did
that
down
fit
below,
with the-
yeah.
Oh, I guess I see what's happening. The bottom porch projects from the face of the house more, and
Yep.
there's an intermediate. Okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think, I guess it's just a question, to me, it's just a question of, is the level of documentation provided sufficient to approve the application, or should we ask them then to submit better documentation?
My preference is to submit better documentation.
I would agree, yeah, the consistency, it's certainly is.
Because at this point, there's no notes on the drawing, and if we approve it, it could be lost.
It's also, I think, out of fairness and consistency, the same things we ask of everyone else who is an applicant. Like, you just need a drawing that is a better representation.
Okay.
And to step.
Because since we're talking about architectural elements, a little more detail of what, of those elements, how they show up in the drawing would make your case, presented more firmly.
And you're probably gonna have to do it for the city submission, permit.
and I think, I mean, to give the applicant direction, I mean, I think we're generally saying we're in favor of
Yeah.
enclosing it, that we're not, it just need the details of the document to make sure that everything is in line.
And that the architectural elements are.
Thank you very much.
So
Is there a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion to continue the application.
I'll second.
that was the motion by Mr. Mather to continue, seconded by Ms. Gunzelman, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Sublette,
Yes.
Mr. Smansky,
Yes.
and Mr. Mather.
Yes.
Motion carries. Are you all, do you understand kind of the marching
Yeah.
orders to,
Yep.
okay. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next application, UID 24 03 008, 1996 Ayuba Avenue. If you would mind reading the staff report.
Certainly. Before we get into this one, I see we've had a few other folks join us. If anyone wants to, a member of the public is planning to speak on one of our cases today, we have speaker slips under the TV in the corner there by the door. You can please complete one of those and bring it up to the table so we can get them for public comments. All right. UID 2403-008, that's for 1996 Ayuba Avenue. The applicant is requesting review and action on exterior building alterations that result in re-roofing the entire building with asphalt shingles, as well as the replacement of 3 attic windows due to damage from a fire. Prior to the fire, there was slate on parts of the roof. The proposed asphalt shingles are CertainTeed Independence in wood color. The new windows are double hung, gel-blend sightline clad window in white, and it will fit the existing openings. Both the shingles and the windows are from the UIDRB approved list. We'll go through materials here. This is just a diagram of what the roofing was prior to the fire. You can see that it was partially shingled and then there was slate on some portions. We have a letter from a roofer here evaluating the condition of the roof after the fire. And then we have the specifications for the window. They have confirmed that the size of the window will match the existing openings. And then we do have some photos, the street view photos, pre-fire. And then we have a plethora of photos post-fire. Else, let's see if we use the damage to the roof and the window situation. All right, so with that, upon review, the proposal is somewhat consistent with the recommendations of the University District Plan. The plan recommends the character defining the original features be maintained. Removal of a slate roof is inconsistent with these guidelines. The plan also recommends that original windows should be maintained, but if replacement is necessary, that the new windows should fit the existing openings without resizing. The applicant was unable to provide information on whether the damaged windows were original, but notes that the replacements will fit the existing openings. While somewhat inconsistent with the plan recommendations due to the damage sustained from the fire to both the roof and the 3 added windows, staff would consider this a reasonable request for replacement and recommend support. Thank you.
Any comments from the board before we let the applicant? Would the applicants state their name and affiliation? Allow me to swear them in.
Sure. Good afternoon, Review Board. My name is Dave Perry. I am project coordinator for city processes. I'll give myself a title.
I call him magician.
That's the best you could do.
Yeah, that's the best he could do.
Jim, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Jim Negron. I am a friend of the owner and acting in his best interest with no compensation at all. So no good deed goes unpunished. So
Jim's a very good friend.
I'm a very good friend of his. So what I'm doing is I connected the owner with Dave and the contractor and just kind of working through all of these things. And they're very good, close friends of my family. And so I'm here to help them as much. And I'm acting as an owner's rep without being compensated. So I can't be called an owner's rep because I'm not being compensated. But I just thought it would be good for you to know the relationship that I have there. So.
Yep.
Do you both?
And I run a construction company here now.
One other thing, Ryan, we also have representatives here from Rogers Roofing, if there needs to be any discussion of the slate and the re-roofing.
Okay.
And we also have representatives from B7 Construction, the general contractor. So if you would like all of
Yeah,
us to
we'll
be.
see if we have their
Yep.
further questions. But do you both swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Is there anything else you?
No, it's, the project is as stated by staff. Unfortunately, there was a bad fire, at the property. There was extensive, roof damage. Rafters had to be replaced to secure the roof. Roof deck was, both burned and damaged. There is extensive water damage throughout the house from putting out the fire. So, the staff has been very helpful with helping us with what's needed to bring this to the review board. And the owner is anxious to proceed with a building permit to get started with the roofing to secure the building. It has tarps on it at the moment. And to secure the building and then proceed with all the interior remodel.
Questions, comments from the board?
It seems reasonable. And the existing roof prior to the fire was a bit of a hodgepodge of slate and asphalt shingle.
Right.
And I think they're all reasonable requests. I think you're putting in new windows that'll fit the openings. They won't have big space or so.
Right.
Yeah.
Commitment to the same size.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly from the staff report, the materials were all from the approved list.
Yeah.
Your. Staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I had in the application also to replace gutters in kind. Some of the half-round gutters were pulled off with the fire.
I don't remember seeing that in there.
Okay, if we can add that, just so that it's covered for the roofer. And then there's smoke damage and so on to the porch white paint and so on, but it's painting in kind with white paint.
Except we need to add that to a motion for clarity.
Yeah,
I would call it as amended to include.
thank you.
Any other discussion or motion?
I just have a question. Was the slate roof damaged on the west and the south, or I'm sorry, north and west sides? Because those two, according to your depiction here, those two sides of the roofing were entirely slate.
They were in the west side is still there. The request with the roofing is to remove it. Our slate roofing company person can speak to that. And the north side was damaged with the fire. And not only with the fire on the roof, but due to the fire and the charring of the rafters and the deck, the underside of the deck.
Sure.
Comments, questions, or motion?
I motion to approve as amended to include replacement of gutters, half-round gutters that was damaged, and for damaged wood to be repainted to match existing.
Second.
Okay, that was a motion by Ms. Sutherland, seconded by Mr. Sutherland. Okay, for a,
And we're also voting on the windows, right? Is that correct?
yes, it's all.
That's all
So
part of
they're
the-
re-roofing the windows, and then they're adding in kind replacement of the half-round gutters and doing some of that repainting. Okay. Good. Okay, so that was a, let's see, approve as amended, to include the replacement of the half-round gutters in kind, and then a repainting to match existing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Sublette,
Yes.
Mr. Smansky,
Yes.
and Mr. Madden.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Was everybody okay, Ms. Fire?
Yeah,
Everybody was
yeah,
okay?
yes, they were.
Okay.
It was an electrical fire up in the attic area. Yeah, thank God it was. Huh?
Is that nothing to you with those?
Some of it was not been too, yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
It's being a gem.
Likewise.
Our next case is UID 24 03 009, 56 Euclid Avenue. That's definitely the staff report.
Application UID 2403-009 for 56 Euclid Avenue. The applicant is requesting review and action on a re-roofing for an existing single-family home in Ditch's Garage. The proposal includes replacing existing asphalt shingle roof on the house and the garage to the deck with Certainty landmark shingles in burnt sienna color, and installing new felt and ice and water guard. Staff knows this work has already been completed. The submission includes before and after photos of the property. Here are the photos. And here you have the pictures. So upon review, staff notes that an application for re-roofing at this property was staff approved in February of 2024. At that time, the applicant was issued a COA for roof replacement with certainty landline shingle in weatherwood color, but the incorrect shingle color was installed, making this project no longer staff approvable. That's why we're here. So the university district plan does not specifically address removal and replacement of an asphalt shingle roof. However, the UIDRB does have an approved shingles list. The installed shingle is one on the list, the selected color is not. So further, staff notes that the burnt sienna color is a like-for-like replacement with what was there. So considering all those things, staff would recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any board discussion? Okay.
Honestly, it's a better shape.
Would you state your name and affiliation?
Terry Gerken, I'm the office manager of JF Baker Sons Roofing.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Is there anything you?
I apologize. I personally made a clerical error. The burnt sienna was the color that the homeowner originally wanted because she wanted it as close to what she already had as possible. When we went through, told her, no, we can't do that. We have to do certain colors. And I didn't update the paperwork properly. I do apologize, and we're hoping that we don't have to go back and tear this roof off and replace it again. These houses are very close together, so it was a difficult job. We're just hoping that maybe you could approve the color so that, I can keep my job. I'm just kidding. But I do apologize. It was.
Did they send you as the sacrificial lamb?
But it's my mess. I told them I would clean it up, so.
Any other?
But you said that the point was made, this was closer to the original, or maybe not original, but what was there before?
Yes. In fact, the color that was approved would have looked terrible in the house, and even the homeowner said that. So she was actually grateful for the mistake, but we want to make sure that we make it right with you guys.
Out of curiosity, was the weathered color?
The weathered wood is more of a grayish color, so, and the house is brown, so it wouldn't have looked great. But
Oh, yeah, it's a dark, short.
I appreciate you bringing it forward and acknowledging the mistake. If it was like something where you took off a slate roof and then you came back and
yeah.
had us, I think it would have been a different conversation.
That's kind
I'm sure that's,
Fine by me.
I'll move to approve.
I second.
So the motion to approve by Mr. Sublette, seconded by Ms. Parker. Thank you. Mr. Fleming,
yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Sublette,
Yes.
Mr. Smansky,
Yes.
and Mr. Madden.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
At this point, we'll be turning it over to Ms. Gunzelman. I recuse myself. Assume someone, right?
Yes.
Next on the agenda is new ID 24-03-010A. We hear the staff report.
Yes. So just for clarification, the next two items on the agenda are actually this case. So I only have one staff report and one set of materials, so I'll just present it all at once. But the A and the B, they're asking for action on the variances, which is A, and then B is for the design. So that's the conceptual piece.
Okay.
So UID 24-03-010 A and B for 1479 to 1497 North High Street. The applicant is requesting conceptual review of a proposed new residential building and action on the associated variances. The project includes a new 15-story, approximately 180 feet, residential building with 557 beds across 177 units, 27 underground structured parking spaces, 84 interior bicycle parking spaces on the first floor. This would include the demolition of 3 potentially contributing structures on the site, which include a 2-story brick mixed-use structure circa 1920 with a 1980 addition on the rear. That's the building with the corner of 9 and 5. Then we have a single-story commercial structure built in 1915, which was heavily modified in 1969. And then there's a commercial structure that was built in 1943 that was heavily modified in 1973. The proposal would require the following variances, and this is the exact language from the application, so I'm going to read it. They're looking for a use variance, a variance request for provisions of section 3356.03, C4 permitted uses, and 3356.05C, C4 district development limitations to permit dwelling units in the C4 commercial district and dwelling units not located above uses contained in the C1, C2, and C3 commercial districts, and those specified in the C4 commercial district. They're also looking for a height variance, which would be a variance request from provisions of section 3325.323 to permit a building height of 179.5 feet. And then a parking variance that would be a variance request from provisions 3312.49C, required parking to permit 27 parking spaces. The submission includes conceptual mapping diagrams, site plan, lower level floor plan, a partial building section, as well as contextual and inspirational images. And I'll go through the package quickly. Here is the site context. So we're talking about this block here at the corner of 9th and High. It is 4 parcels, and then referred to later contextually are this series of rental units along 9th Avenue. And for context, here are the existing condition photo site. And then these are just some photos of some of the other developments in the area. Here's some additional site context in regards to the height. You can see the proposed building here, and then some of the other buildings in the area. The submission does include an alternate massing proposal for something shorter. I think this is maybe 6 stories here, and then building, doing demolition where those units on 9th are and building something here. But that's not what they're proposing. They are proposing to preserve all those units and do something taller at the corner of 9th and High. Here's just a conceptual massing for that new structure and some inspirational images. This is a map of a project. The applicant can speak to that much more educated than I can. When it comes to parking, so again, here's the site. There is a parking lot here, and then there is also a parking garage here that they are considering some parking agreements with. And then we have our floor plans. So this is the first floor plan. You see townhome units along West 9th, and then some of that residential support space here. This is a strictly residential building. There's no commercial space. And then here is that lower level parking, the section. And then here is some of the more technical drawings that are associated with the variance requests. So upon review, the University District Plan recommends regional mixed use on the site, which can include residential, as well as adaptive reuse and or expansion of contributing buildings, a minimum floor area ratio of 1, maximum building height of 72 feet, and then parking at a rate of 0.37 spaces per bed for residential uses. The proposal is somewhat consistent with these recommendations. As such, the applicant is requesting variances for height and parking in addition to the inclusion of ground floor residential. Planning supports the use and district limitation variances, but requests that the proposal incorporate an element of preservation as recommended by the plan. And then the high quality site and building design be incorporated moving forward to minimize the impact on surrounding properties. The plan's design guidelines recommend preservation and rehabilitation of existing buildings, and that High Street continue as a mixed-use corridor with the densest development. Planning requests that the potentially contributing building, the one that is circa 1920 at the corner of 9th and High, be preserved, incorporated, or otherwise included in the overall design. Furthermore, the plan recommends that new construction utilize high-quality materials, articulation, a high level of transparency on the first floor, street trees, public art, and lighting that minimizes light spillage. Lastly, the plan calls for buildings' height and mass to be mitigated through the use of setbacks, quality architecture, and materials. Minimal information on design and materiality have been provided at this time to evaluate for consistency with plan recommendations. As the design progresses, planning recommends the building be dynamically masked and articulated with street trees along the North High Street frontage, a setback along the rear alley frontage above the 3rd story, landscaping, pedestrian amenities, and art murals on any blank walls. Planning is supportive of the townhome units along West 9th Avenue. So as far as our recommendations, as for the variances, we are supportive, and then there's not a recommendation on the design at this point as it's a conceptual review. Thank you.
Thank you. Do everyone swear them all in or separately?
So first we need to know if there are any questions or comments from me.
Are there any questions or comments from you?
And then do we do the, like, after that?
That's what I'm finding.
I know we're talking about the corner site, but I think, just in terms of context, that some discussion of your plans for what's happening on 9th Avenue would be important to add to the discussion.
I would say, go ahead and swear them in, and they can add any additional information. And then before you start doing like any question and answer with them, we can see if there are any members of the public who want to speak. I do have one speaker slip. I'm not sure if anyone has come in with additional ones, since then.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if everybody could raise their right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you state who you are and who you're affiliated with?
Sure. Dan Whalen, I'm the Vice President of Development Design for Harbor Bay.
I'm Amy Haney. I'm an architect at DLR Group.
Steve Willoughby, Harbor Bay Ventures, I handle government and public relations.
Great, thank you very much. Do you have anything to add to the application?
Well, I think just referencing some of Tim's commentary there, from the beginning, I think something that's differentiated our project, and that's a good slide to stop on, is recently we purchased the entire home team properties portfolio, which surrounds campus and is part of, I think, 2,500 property or beds, excuse me, across about 600 or 700 properties. In doing so, over the course of time, we're going to make capital improvements, and we're going to eliminate a lot of code violations that were lingering and took place across that portfolio. But what it did is it gave us an opportunity to look at this development site in the context of, we talk about preservation and keeping what we'll, I guess, refer to as naturally occurring affordability, mostly because the houses in the portfolio that we purchased, the rents are between $600 and $700 per bed on a monthly basis, and they've been that way pretty firmly for a while, which is about half the cost of a lot of the new construction student projects that have been built in the vicinity, including the new ones that are being constructed right now. The anticipated rents on the north side there at the newest project is probably going to be $1,200 to $1,800. So from that standpoint, we'd like to preserve those houses, and it's part of our intent to take the density and the development that we could have put moving west down 9th Street and actually push it onto the commercial district and keep it in a singular footprint in a taller, more slender building with less parking, and be able to preserve the 132 beds that are in those 13 houses. And there's a few sort of garden style apartment buildings in there as well. But generally speaking, we think, and we've had a lot of conversations with the UAC as well. We'll be back there on Monday evening, the zoning committee, and separate discussions with the leaders of that group, Tim included, about how to incorporate a project that contextually makes sense while pushing verticality in exchange for not demolishing those properties that are contributing to the neighborhood and the scale. While we understand Columbus is growing at a rate that is amongst the highest in the country. And the city is undergoing a full-scale zoning study to change the code, and High Street is one of those locations that is going to be considered for changes. And we feel that what we're proposing and the way that we're going about it fits in line with where the planning department has contextually been telling us things are trending, although we can't guarantee where those will end up. We think with the height and the way that we're thinking about sustainability, especially with referencing our mass timber construction, which I'm sure we can talk about in detail, and limiting the parking and really thinking about district-wide solutions as opposed to property-specific solutions is the way that things are going to move here in the future as the city considers more walkable and approachable ways to densification. So I think that's most of my comments for the
I
moment.
would just really like to add, from a standpoint of how we got to 15 stories, it wasn't a situation where we came into the community and said, this is what we would like to build. We started with neighborhood meetings back in October, where we came in and we said, there was the rendering of showing the massing that would state that we would push westward, on the entire home team, this rendering right here. And we said, based on what's allowable by code, this is the way our team is looking at the site from a potential development opportunity and understanding what the UAC is, what the properties look like throughout the neighborhood. There's a lot of homes that add neighborhood character. There's a lot of desire to preserve homes such as that. And correct, thank you. You're spot on in regards to switch, and I appreciate that. But in regards to preserving these homes, so how do we work together and really take this piece of clay from a standpoint of designing, taking the square footage that we could build across this site and then come together to do something. So we really looked at it from a square footage exercise of taking it and then just really condensing it. So through a course of public meetings that we did, where we posted them, they were public, open to anyone. We began to work through and get additional input that put us in a position to see the building that you have today. And as a result of that, we've actually reduced the amount of square footage that we would have been built across the site. You're actually seeing yet less units, and you're actually seeing less beds. So from a height perspective, it appears to have more density, but through this process led by a number of folks within the community, through this collaboration, we're actually to create less density. So it's for us, it was quite exciting because this is something that we're often wanting to do with neighborhood stakeholders. But this has been a true opportunity to do it in a genuine first time, to go through it, where it's been a real back and forth to get to where we're at. And as Dan stated, to then be able to take that collaboration, preserve all the affordability, and then build one of the, a profound student-focused housing development out of mass timber that's going to be incredibly sustainable from an embodied carbon perspective, just really checks a lot of boxes for us, and we're excited about it.
Lori, may I make just a point of clarification?
Sure.
I think in fairness, since the mention of the University Area Commission, that we were very happy to facilitate community meetings, particularly at that early stage, but there is no position taken
Correct.
by the commission at this point. And in fact, the project will come to the zoning committee and full commission this coming month.
Thank you. Amy, would you like to take us through the architecture as you have it produced, Massey?
Sure. So we can go up a little bit further. There we go.
Right there, yeah.
This is good to start at. We're just looking farther north. I just wanted to add on to Dan and Steve's comments. As a result of these neighborhood commission meetings, really the idea to put those townhouses on the ground floor, which necessitates the need for the use variance, was a result of those meetings, and we really appreciate that as well. This is actually probably a little bit better. So yeah. So as you can see here on the 9th Avenue side, we're showing townhouses here, and we had to apply for this meeting a month ago. So we've actually added another townhouse to the 9th Avenue side. So this whole frontage on Ninth, we think is a better solution to move kind of into the neighborhood and be a better transition from the High Street commercial side into that neighborhood again. We're also providing much more pedestrian amenity along Wall Street, which right now is just a kind of paved wasteland of 14 feet. But that whole right of way is 20 feet. We are proposing pulling back the building 12 feet from the property line, provide pedestrian amenity loading zones, including a ride share and food drop off loading zone to keep it off of the 9th Avenue and High Street side so that there will be minimal traffic impact with stopping and starting. That's also where we're proposing to have the loading zone. As you can see there on the south side, that is where the southwest corner is where the ramp is entering for the underground parking. Our variance request is for 27 spaces, but there are actually 35 spaces underground there. It would be tandem spaces that could be shared between units, so that you can get in and out as you need with your neighbors. There we go, there's the underground parking. We will be including, we're trying to include electrical vehicle parking spaces, but apparently we're not allowed to per the fire code. So we will be adjusting that variance request as well. We hop back up to the site plan. As Dan and Steve mentioned below, and Stephanie as well, the use variance is for the inclusion of dwelling units on the ground floor. And we are not including a commercial space. However, there is what will function as a commercial space on that southeast corner, which is the leasing office, and amenities for the residents of the building. And that will be staffed, we think, I mean, almost full-time. It's like an office space would be, or a retailer. And that was, again, trying to incorporate these urban uses on the High Street side. And then as you can see a little bit in this plan, it's maybe not large enough. We are pulling back the base of the building at the 9th and High corner to provide more of that pedestrian landing zone at the crosswalk across High Street. That was a request of the multiple building department or multiple departments at the city in our site compliance plan review. So that we are providing, I think, another 8 feet to that sidewalk. It is very narrow now with that current building at the corner. And that is where the residents and the public would enter the building. And then hopefully you'll be able to see this beautiful timber structure behind with a nice grand staircase going up to the upper level amenity zone and courtyard. Right now, we're just looking at inspiration images for what this could look like. It's up at the top, there you go. So these are previous buildings that DLR Group has been a part of, as well as Harbor Bay, and then a few other just inspirational images. We really want to express that timber at the ground floor. Again, showing how we're pulling back from the corner there and providing more pedestrian access along High and 9th. And then having an interaction inside and out with lots of glass at the ground level and second story so that it's not closed off and is relating to the public streets.
And mention it.
Yeah, I was going to say, DLR Group humbly has been the architect of record on all of Heinz's T3 properties, which is their mass timber office product that they have, I think, 25 in planning and development, and about 6 or 7 that have been delivered. And then we at Harbor Bay built the largest mass timber project in the country at the time it was delivered in Cleveland. And it's been 2 years now. We delivered it in April of 2022. It's a large mixed-use building in a highly transited urban corridor next to the West Side Market. So it's in a historic district. We went through landmarks there as well. We were able to incorporate a ton of ground floor green space and really dynamic pedestrian thoroughfares. And I think if you were to peek at our website and just to peruse that project, you would see that the attention to detail and the architectural product, I guess I would say, is far differentiated from the rest of things that are being built in its vicinity right now. So we hope to emulate that and really deliver a special project here as well with the use of mass timber. And this would be the first mass timber building in Columbus and the first purpose-built student mass timber building in the country.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak? If you want to come to the podium, please.
Well, this one for Mr. Singleton. I'm not sure if there's anyone else.
Mr. Singleton, you want to come to the podium? And I need to swear you in. If you raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Podium's falling apart.
Sorry.
Don't touch it.
Could you affirm?
I affirm.
Okay, thank you.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Bob Singleton. I'm a university area resident. I live on Adams Avenue. A polite way to describe this project might be carrot and stick development. A less polite way might be call it coercion. To begin with, Harbor Bay's 15-story proposal is a gross distortion of university plan guidelines. The height under the university plan maximum 72 feet, as proposed 180 feet. Their own information indicates only University Hospital Complex and Lincoln Tower would be taller. Neither is anywhere near the center of the neighborhood. Most newly built high street buildings are 6 or 7 stories, not 15. As for parking, university plan would require 189 spaces. They are proposing 27. Their solution to the discrepancy appears to be putting the parking somewhere else. Carrot and stick development. Give Harbor Bay what it wants, and they get the carrot. Say no, and the neighborhood gets the stick. In this case, the stick is demolition of 13 properties along 9th Avenue west of the site, containing 132 units of affordable housing, renting on average for $700 a month. Harbor Bay can demolish them all because it owns them all, bought from Home Team Properties, presumably to give Harbor Bay leverage to get what it wants from you. If their project is as good as they say it is, shouldn't it be able to stand on its own without the threat of demolition of unrelated properties? Thank you.
Thank you. And we had an email in support of this.
Yep.
Did everybody get a chance to read that email? Please check in. Okay, the board is open to answer or ask any questions they may have of the applicant. I guess I'll start. Is there any affordable housing contained within the tower?
Not designated within the tower, no.
Okay. There's also, on the corner of, 9th and High, a building which is of the original urban fabric. What is your, comment about demolishing this piece of architecture?
I think our approach to that, as was fairly recently brought up, and we've been privy to some of the discussions that happened with previously proposed developments here as well. And so we've been thinking about and anticipating a manner in which, I don't know if we can preserve that facade as it stands, but we can incorporate similar ideas and intents and sort of tip a cap to it in a way with our new design. If you can see in the imagery that we're proposing with the mass timber feel and look, it's quite contemporary, and with mass timber as well, I don't want to say you're limited, but you end up a lot of times with a very strict grid. And so I think that really juxtaposes against some of that more ornate detailing that you see in the cornicing of that building in a way that probably would be challenging to make work together. So we're going to look into it, and I think when we come further for our actual design review portion of this, presuming we can move forward with design, then I think we would have some ideas about how to accomplish that.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Can you speak a bit more about the evolution of the Ninth Avenue existing houses as part of this, and how that developed, how you're viewing those as an integral part of this project?
So with the three-story predominantly context of the houses, and a lot of them appear to be from slightly different timeframes of historic context, especially with the buildings most nearest to the Wall Street alley. You know, we looked at all kinds of different ways to approach this, and I think from the conversations that we've had and the feedback we've heard is the most thoughtful way was to try to keep the density out of these neighborhoods. And so one thing we want to try to accomplish is a little bit of beautification of these organically as we lift the properties up over the medium to long term. But I think there's ways contextually that we can work with the alley at Wall Street, with the amount of utilities that are kind of crossing every which way, and there's electrical poles and wires that, quite frankly, I don't, you know, I'm not even sure where you start when you're dismantling some of that stuff, but to just beautify this and really, as you look at these pictures, nothing about this corner at the moment is appealing in terms of its pedestrian realm. And if you flipped around and looked at the other side of the street on the north end, you know, you at least have some semblance of landscaping, and these approaches to these townhomes, for example, and the larger trees, I think just present a much better experience for someone walking. I mean, you can see the way the two sidewalks are drastically in different shape there. So we're looking to create that sort of experience to where people walking from and to the neighborhood don't feel stunned when they approach what's there currently. So we really want to add to the dynamic. And, you know, behind this, there's also a large surface parking lot, which is part of how we propose dealing with some of the solutions.
Can I add?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I'd like to add one thing in regards to your initial question, Tim, is, so when we were looking at this, kind of looking at that block of clay from an affordability standpoint as well, we're looking at all the beds and so forth. So where we ultimately got to this, we were looking at the rents that we were currently getting within those units and so on. And although they're separate projects, we were looking at totality in regards to the bed count. So we really began to, as we're going through this and trying to provide some affordability versus within the unit, we were looking at it as one big block and one big development. So when we got to this point, and why Dan referred to the rent rate, is that we were able to realize that we're going to be able to provide, by maintaining those units and then focusing the market rate units within the new tower, that of the total development, by maintaining those 20% of the units were going to be affordable. So by doing that, you know, allowed us to accomplish that. Now, we can't put that specifically in an application because they're standalone. The same way when you're looking at a mixed-use development, you know, often it's perceived as being within the footprint, but a mixed-use development is the neighborhood itself and how it transcends, you know, what's across the street, how does that complement? So that's the way that we approach the design of this. But when it comes to an application, you have to look at the footprint. And that was something that was very important to us. So to us, they just weren't a standalone. It was in totality. And it's how we got to where we got.
To clarify, those will be under the same management as the tower.
Yes.
And the other follow-up question it's premature to talk about how in terms of design, but I understand, particularly from Cleveland, that you do have experience in working with combining your particular product with more historical scale neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our building fronts onto the West Side Market, which is one of the most historic buildings in the city of Cleveland.
And smaller scale neighborhoods.
Smaller scale neighborhoods, yeah.
Yeah.
But what we were able to do was work within, it is in a commercial district. And so we really were able to mold up all clay by creating open green space. This site makes it a little difficult just because of how tight and narrow it is. But I think we are contributing in terms of what we want to create for the pedestrian realm. and the way that the building can interact with the street, even though we're proposing different uses than you might see generally along a lot of the buildings on High Street. And so I like to think that we have to take a really thoughtful approach to design and that we push our architects as opposed to having to be pushed by them. And so that's no different here. And I think with the innovative and sustainable nature of mass timber, that gives us even a further opportunity to reach and do something unique.
And then, I mean, then with the encouragement to not do retail in it and to consider something, and then there's a huge, a huge advocacy in regards to the comments we're getting at the community meetings, the initial community meetings, because we still have more, to how do you connect your development along night with the neighborhood. So when, Amy and Dan and the rest of the design team started talking about the townhomes and how we integrate that, and then they started looking at this, that's where you can start seeing the connection of how that really tied into it. So it really provided a different option for us. It was, as you say, one of those aha moments where you're like, well, if we're able to accomplish that, I think it'll create a nice flow compared to what it looks like and how you create that connection to it.
I have a dumb question. The houses that they own along 9th Street, do those fall in the UIDRB jurisdiction or not?
They did, yeah. And I was trying to sort out what the zoning code, and that's a question for staff. So the zoning map says they are AR4. The University Impact District plan says they're high-intensity residential with an FAR 0.6. I guess my question is what the city zoning code can be a bit of a mess, speaking from personal experience. What is actually allowed on those properties, 9th Avenue, West Wall, currently, based on current zoning? Height and mass. Sorry, I'm stealing your question.
No, it gets to the heart of it.
Yeah.
Stephanie, we're encouraged to see that you go where we go.
Yeah.
Positive
You don't have a secret.
reinforcement.
You don't have a secret.
Yeah, we're looking to see if you go to some back door.
Yeah. Taking notes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's all of the overlays that kind of trip me up. I know it's 35 feet, but the
action zoning.
So you're talking about the houses on Ninth, not.
Yes, the house on Ninth, yeah.
So those are, base zoning is multifamily AR4 with a height of 35 feet. And then you're correct, the plan recommends higher intensity residential.
Yeah, so can you get us to the AR4 requirements? Because I think there are requirements in terms of front yard, rear yard, and there's not a FAR in the original zoning code, but
Correct.
I think there are certain parameters in terms of what you can develop as a site.
Do you have a specific question? Because it may take me a moment to navigate to that.
I think you and I are in the same place, so
Well, I don't know.
What is the crux of the needing this information?
Okay, so I agree with the speaker's comment that it's a little bit of a threat. The way, so for future.
this is a
proposals-
nice piece of property. It'd be a shame if something.
Yeah, it's like a
happened.
mob threat, like. That being said, I am largely in support of this proposal. I agree with so much from what you said about a regional mixed use case, not to mention that retail on the ground floor is hard to come by these days since brick and mortar is essentially dead. So we're essentially asking for food services to fill all of our ground floor retail. Bad chance. I agree with the need for density. I like keeping the density out of the neighborhood. I acknowledge that we're actually gonna get less density with the tower proposal. That being said, it's such a win to keep that density out of the neighborhood, and I would think that would be better or more wanted by the residents themselves.
My take is it's a little bit of a red herring. I don't think current zoning allows them to do it on the screen, so.
So that's your question, is this a feasible?
Yeah, I don't think it is, because I don't think the FAR under the university plan allows it, not at 0.6. So I think to me, this is basically a sales pitch, like, hey, it's great, it's 2 stories, we're gonna maintain rents. I mean, honestly, also not our purview, like, our purview is the mass density appropriate on High Street? And so, like, to me, the simpler discussions, leave all that aside, because it's outside our purview, and it's kind of irrelevant. And is the height, the bulk, the massing, and eventually the aesthetics, the appropriate use for high and nine.
The one thing I'll say about this image, though, is it speaks to where the city is going as far as the zoning initiative and getting that density on High Street and out of the neighborhood along the corridors. So it's helpful to think about the previous proposal. I mean, I guess the other, the one that you're not going to get to do and you don't want to do. It's helpful to think about this one as where the city is going from, and the next one is where the city is going to. And that zoning hasn't been released yet. So I think that's where it's difficult for the commission to say, oh yeah, build 15 stories when that zoning recommendation hasn't been released by the city. They may end up saying that that's okay, but right now it's only 72 feet. So we, in approving this, if we did, would be going out.
Which is why at this point they're requesting variances. Should,
Sure,
in the future, this may not, I have no idea, but in the future, this may not require a variance.
Right.
So I mean, I think that brings you to kind of the crux of the question, which is 15 stories at this location, regardless of preservation, rent control, and all that, is that the appropriate mass and bulk for the site?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm not sure. I have to think about that. I mean, I guess the one thing I will say is like, if I leave that aside and I look at this, 15 stories, it being an extrusion of the site, it maybe doesn't necessarily help the case for me. It gets you more units, it gets you a simpler structure, I get all that, but it doesn't, I'm not sure it has enough in the architectural merit to warrant 15 stories. And we've pushed back on buildings that have been within zoning rights that did it. Just in the district, you can't, even though you're within rights to do 6 stories and 72 feet, that doesn't mean that the straight extrusion of the site is going to win you approval, because otherwise previous applicant who's in the audience tonight would have got his bill for something. So I think my perspective is, I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm also not seeing something that wins me over on the merits of 15 stories. Love to see heavy timber at Columbus. On the flip side, that's not going to be expressed on the exterior, which is our purview. And from a sustainability and carbon standpoint, that is not a total share of building, because the rest of it is in operational energy. So would love to see it here, but I think to me, there's more work that needs to be done with the overall massing and flooring to sell the desire for height.
From a local business standpoint, I guess I'm a little disappointed to see that there isn't a spot for a local business owner to potentially be able to have a spot to be able to rent. I do understand the housing properties along 9th. I can see that, I can visualize it. I'm picturing almost Chicago, style, which I'm here for. I love the look of that. But I just am wondering, I feel like I was put on this board because I'm not an architect, so I'm not really, down with what they're speaking a foreign language to me, but I understand community spaces, and I'm wondering, you know, if you have 16 stories, how are you trying to engage the community? I know you talked about like pulling it back so that the sidewalks are bigger, which is great, but like, where are your gathering spaces then? Because to me, it sounds like this isn't necessarily open to the public. It sounds like you kind of have to rent from this place, which if you're on High Street, I would like to know, you know, how can I go in as somebody who might not be renting there, but also can experience this great wood that you're referring to? Like, what good does that do to me? So, you know, where are these community spaces that you're kind of thinking? And I know we're just kind of talking about conceptually here, but if you're thinking about 16, 15 stories up, where do you see that happening?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a good question. And with the tight site, it's harder and harder to implement open space at the ground floor, especially if we're not proposing any retail, then it really does become a private building for residents. You know, one of the things that led us to this is if you look at some of the new construction projects that are really between like King, where the Kroger is, all the way up to 10th or 11th, a lot of them have fully empty retail, and some of them still have graphics on the windows from the time they were constructed, right? And so part of that is, I think maybe they haven't just put a lot of energy into leasing those spaces, and secondarily, I think it's too expensive. And so
There you go.
in exchange, you know, we're proposing kind of a different setup, right? And so I think to that degree, it's somewhat difficult to figure out how to answer the question in a way that the public can engage with the inside of the building. And I think that's why our hope as we push further into design is that we can express that timber on the outside, as you were suggesting, Keone. And so I think we're just not there yet with our design, just because that kind of trails where we can go with once the zoning is clarified. But
There are a few images up there that we're heading towards. It is fully our intention to express the timber on the exterior, like that bottom left image there. And we have also been talking about like the possibility of putting a few cafe tables in indoor and outdoor. So the lobby functions kind of like a coffee shop, at least for the residents. And I mean, Harbor Bay would have to make a decision about operationally if they let people in the lobby space. But I anticipate that this would be much more active than a lot of the things that are across the street or down the street on a day-to-day basis, inside and outside.
I think the commission's goal is to see activity, and I wouldn't disagree that a vacant retail space is not what we want to see. We want to see activity. So perhaps there's a way that can happen. I mean, I always argue when you look at a lobby or a lounge of a residential tower, you see no one. But if it was a residential tower of students and that was their study space or their workspace, I can foresee a lot of activity happening there. So I think it's how you program that space. Are there any other questions regarding, because this is the zoning portion of it, regarding the zoning portion? And can you restate the variances that we're being asked to review?
So they are requesting 3 variances. I'll paraphrase them this time unless you want me to completely reread them. The one is for use to allow the residential units on the ground floor. The second one is for height to allow up to 179.5 feet. The current maximum height is 72 feet. And then they are also requesting a parking variance for to allow 27 spaces in the underground garage. I can calculate for you what it should be, unless they know off the top of their head, based on the 0.37 spaces per bed.
Yeah, we didn't have that calculation.
How many?
We thought it was half.
the proposal has 177. That number's fluctuating a little bit as the unit mix changes, but
It's based on bed, so 577.
7 beds, how many units?
no, I'm sorry, 177 units.
How many beds?
57 beds times
217.
Okay. And I can talk about parking if anybody wants to hear.
I think it'd be good to point out.
So if you go up one slide, and this slide doesn't actually capture everything, it captures the crux of what we're talking about though. So with the yellow area behind those homes, seasonally over the last 2 school years, as we have the data, less than half of those spaces have been leased by residents in those homes. And so We've got excess space there to park, about 40 or 50 spaces that we could designate to this project. And then the garage across the street on 9th, it's 300 feet from the top northeast corner of our site to the southwest corner of that garage. It's run by Campus Park, which runs all the garages across the university. It's got about 1,200 spaces at any given point in time. Even at peak periods, that garage is no more than 50 to 60% full, and it's 1,200 spaces. And so there's 500 to 600 spaces that are unused at all hours, let alone at peak periods. And so if you head a little bit west down 9th, there's 2 other garages, a similar story. And then there's a garage on 11th. There's a garage 2 blocks to the north on High. And so what we're talking about isn't so much a sniper approach to parking. It's a district-wide approach to parking, to where complementary uses and the amount of car trips are not really what they used to be. And I don't think it's that everyone has to go without a car. I think it's most of these people and these students in particular don't need their car every single day. And so the point is, why build more and really stress costs and stress construction and extend durations of construction when there are not just ample places to park, but truly underutilized garages that could go underutilized with many more projects to come. And so that's been our approach, and that's why we're suggesting this, is because the university has so much money invested in these parking structures and they're sitting mostly empty. And even if you pull up Campus Park, they have a live feed of real time, just how full any of these garages are. And I bet right now that if you looked, it would be 20 to 30% full across that portfolio at this hour on this day, which is a school day in session here. And so the peak periods of those garages being used are about midday during the week. And a lot of them, believe it or not, I'm told by Matt, who was one of the managers, is a lot of construction workers who are working on nearby projects. And so as those projects, specifically the hospital, eventually wrap up, some of that utilization will fall back too. So I think it's a sound approach. I think it's one that thinks from an urban design and multimodal framework. And over time, as the zoning code is trending that direction, I'm not sure where it'll end up, whether it's removing all parking minimums or just reducing them. I think this will fall directly in line with that approach.
And just to add on that, based on your parking code, our residents would not be eligible for a parking permit from
on the streets.
On the street.
Yeah, I would say I'm sympathetic on that note. I don't really care about the parking. I guess I do have a question for Stephanie. Then in the past, the discussion about sort of affirmative support or not support on the variances has been tied to the design. Is that still the intent, or is the guidance from the city that we're gonna do something on variances before there's a design that works?
That's up to you all. You could take action on the variances today, but if you feel like you need additional information on the design, on the massing, things like that, before you're comfortable making a recommendation on the variances, then you could continue this portion of the application.
Could I propose one potential path forward? If the height is still in question, you want to see some articulation and some furthering of the design, is there a potential for us to move forward with the vote on the parking and the use variances and table the height discussion to allow us to move our design a little bit more forward with knowing those two things? Because that will help us shape the building and do a little bit more focused design as we move forward with SD.
I think that we could do that. It may complicate your path forward with building and zoning services. Essentially, you're going to be splitting the application. We don't do like conceptual approvals, but what we have had folks kind of take assurance in the past is these meetings are recorded, they're on YouTube, so you're getting the sense of whether the board is okay with that parking situation or with the ground floor residential uses without actually getting an approval. But enough that you would feel comfortable.
Stephanie's politely saying we're on record. So
Understood. Understood. So we're going to the zoning committee for the UAC on Monday, and then presumably to the full commission 2 weeks to follow.
Yeah.
And by then we'll also have some design moving forward on terms of our architecture and exterior. And so I guess I would propose that we come back to you next month.
And I would jump in. That is our hope. in regards to schedule. That is, I don't want to be presumptuous in regards to the zoning committee, you know, that would be contingent upon them taking action, and that may be tabled based on their discretion.
I think maybe for the sake of clarity, I'll try and state my position as clearly as possible, because I know that's also been a challenge for other applicants when getting clarity from where the individual board members stand. I mean, I think with regard to the variances, I'm not vehemently opposed to the height, getting an increase on the height. I'm just not quite there or convinced by what I've seen yet. I'm leaning towards opposing the release from commercial. I agree with you, there's a lot of commercial space behind vinyl, partly because the owners don't want to reduce their square foot costs. But to your point, these buildings are going to be here for a long time, and the equation of the cost of real estate might change, and there might be a point where those commercial uses will pencil out. But if you approve something without it, you're not going to put it back in later. So I'm not inclined personally to release them from the obligation for commercial space on the ground floor. Parking, I'm fine. I think, and you know, I think I'd like to see more from a design to convince me that the height and bulk are warranted.
I largely agree with what Keely said. I don't have much trouble with the height, but I think the articulation of the architecture is really going to help. You're already starting to do that with the townhomes, or at least you're implying you're doing that with the townhomes. So I think those gestures going all the way around the building are really going to help. Not that you're not doing it now, but we're just not seeing it. Parking is fine. I'm okay with incorporating retail or other commercial activities on the ground floor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila.
Yeah, I guess I'm going more here. The height is, it's a little high for me, so I'd like to see like what exactly you're doing up there to make it so that it could be a focal point, because that's what it would be. You would see it for miles, and you'd be blocking my sun at some point. So I'd like to know what I'm looking at. So if you could provide me with a little bit more insight as to what it looks like, that would be great. And as far as pulling it back, I love the idea of that, to widen the sidewalks, because if you can't have necessary a spot within it, it could be outside of it, even just with vegetation that you have out of it. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Parking, that would be fun if you could provide us with, like you had mentioned, a pickup area on the back, and then also spaces for parking your bike, or, you know, using alternative routes and utilizing the bus, and, you know, providing a safe area for people to kind of hang out, for sure.
Personally, and once again, Zach, you know, not speaking for the commission in any way. Personally, I'm really intrigued by the model of a project that includes the variety of housing that you have, from the new construction to the reuse with that affordable element. I'm also really intrigued by a project that has a very different goal in terms of the effect it has on a street than we see from most developers of large projects. I think that the height is the difficult part. And if I feel, I think there's inevitably some conflicted feeling there. And I think it would be very helpful to have some more design, something more to go on as we look at that. I think Keely's, I think you made that suggestion initially, and I think it's a very sound one.
I'm also okay with the parking. That's not one of my concerns. I do need to see a lot more architecture and articulation in order to get behind height variance. I'm sort of torn a little bit on the commercial. On the first level, my main goal is to activate the street in a way that is feasible and can live the length and life of the project. I actually really enjoy the idea of having townhouses on 9th Avenue. I think that is a really positive thing to see. I also enjoy some of your suggestions on how you're pulling back from the sidewalk to provide a little bit more room. It is tight there. So that one, I'm still a little trying to get behind it. I just need a reason to get behind it. But yeah, I'm encouraged to see what the architecture is going to show us.
Thank you very much.
So should we move to table the variance?
I would call it a motion to continue,
Okay,
but yes.
I'll make a motion to continue the application.
do I hear a second?
I'll second.
That was a motion to continue by Mr. Mather, seconded by Mr. Sublette. Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Sublette,
Yes.
Mr. Swansky has recused himself, and Mr. Mather.
Yes.
Motion carries.
It's not big deal.
And then, we will just transcribe these notes,
Yeah.
for both the A and B. So the A will be the variances and the B will be the design, but we'll put it all together for you for follow-up.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
Oh, so we did. All right.
Okay. Okay, so we did that. Okay, so I think our last case for today is UID 24 03 011. Good seeing everyone again. We'll let Stephanie do the staff report. This is a conceptual view again, correct? So.
Yes. Application UID 2403-011 for 82-96 and 102 to 104 East 16th Avenue. The applicant is seeking conceptual review for the construction of a new residential building. The proposal includes the demolition of the church building on site, construction of a new 5-story, approximately 313-bed residential building with amenity spaces, terraces, covered entries, and first floor glazing, street trees, as well as parking on a portion of the first level. The submission includes a conceptual site plan, floor plans, elevations, renderings, sections, and material examples. Go through these materials here. And our site information showing the existing and then the proposed site plan. And then we have our perspectives with the new development. This is the corner here at 16th and Waldeck. This is our 16th Avenue perspective. And then here's the Waldeck perspective. And then this is that back piece of the building that is neighboring to the service parking lot, I believe, for fraternity house. And then we have our site plan with the ground floor plan. You can see that parking, the townhome units, this is that existing duplex. And then the lobby and amenity spaces here with the entry to the garage off of Waldeck. We have a second floor plan. You see that amenity in the center. The applicant has provided some ideas for what the materials would be. And then we have our elevations. And then some site sections. And then the applicant has also provided a comparison for how this project has evolved over time. So here we have all 8 of the conceptual reviews that we've done, starting with July, and they have shown what the height, floors, units, beds, and green space was at each of those reviews. And then they've also broken those out individually to show kind of what the overall building looked like, a streetscape, a floor plan, and then again, that detail on things like height, units, preservation, et cetera. Those, August, September, October, November, December, and June. And here they took February off and now they are back. So with this, we'll have to here. So with this, the proposal came before the UIDRB in July, August, September, October, November, and December 2023, as well as January 2024. At the most recent meeting, the board still had concerns about the overall heights and massing and requested the proposal be further developed before the next review. There were questions and comments regarding the preservation of the architectural elements from the church building, functionality of the spacing between the townhome units, and a request that the porch features on the main building be reevaluated. The applicant has provided documentation of how the proposal has evolved since the initial review in response to board feedback, which is what we just went through. The recommended land use for this site is institutional. However, staff notes that these properties are generally surrounded by parcels recommended for higher intensity residential use. The plan provides guidance on adaptively reusing institutional sites. As such, staff supports the higher intensity residential development on this site, as the proposal is generally consistent with plan recommendations. The plan recommends that new construction be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of size and scale. The revised option is consistent with this recommendation. Since the July 2023 meeting, the proposal has been reduced from 573 beds to 313 beds. While the proposal is more intense than the current use, staff understands the transitional nature of the site. The plan also recommends the preservation of contributing structures. Buildings on site are potentially contributing. The proposal results in the demolition of the church building, but does preserve the duplex at 102 to 104 East 16th Avenue. The University District Plan also recommends open space preservation be a primary consideration for redevelopment proposals to conserve as much open space and mature trees on site as possible. And that multi-family buildings should include stoops, porches, balconies, or other features to ensure that they contribute to street activity. The proposal maintains approximately 25% green space on site, as well as several mature trees. Moving forward, staff recommends the applicant continue to take the University District Plan recommendations regarding building and site design, materiality, lighting, landscaping, and parking into consideration as the design continues to develop. The applicant should be mindful of the applicable land use category standards and engage with the Department of Building Zone Services to identify any needed differences. There is no staff recommendation at this time, as this is a conceptual review. Thank you.
Okay. I think, or do we want to have the speaker first, correct?
The way we did it for the last one was if you all have any questions for me.
First, and then we'll do that. Okay. Are there any questions for staff before we? Okay. Then we'll do the speaker first before we swear the applicant in. I'm saying, is this
Mr. Singleton.
Mr. Singleton? You are up.
Oh,
This morning.
Okay.
I don't have much. It's still too big, too tall, an intrusion on one of the most attractive off-campus areas. And the parking deficiency. The university plan requires 235 spaces. And it's proposed would have 96. This in an extremely high density area. I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Okay, for the applicant, I think we know everyone. So I'll just ask you guys to swear in. Do you swear affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. I'll let you, I'm sure you'll have something to add, so.
Nope. Never short lived.
Well, thank you, and thank you, staff. And if we can maybe go to the summary page that had all the detail on there, I think that'd be a good place to start for all of us, and also, give Daniel a little bit of background on the project, like what's happened over the years. And it's good to see you found a new seat to contribute, Daniel, so happy for you there. So anyway, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I do think it's important to see the process of what we've gone through this collaborative effort, with working with the board and the area commission, and of course, with the campus development team. So from the upper left, as a book, was where we started. So as you can see, the numbers were very high. The building was very dense. Back then, I think it was referred to as the Texas Donut Building. So we understood the challenges there. I think the big thing going from the July to the August was, and admittedly, the August and the September versions that we came in with were still all at the 6-story. And I know that was one of the issues that, had always been kind of harping on everybody here. But in that August meeting, the first step that we gained there was picking up a significant amount of open green space around the building. And that was a product of compressing the building and making the footprint smaller, but not necessarily any shorter. So the September version was similar. Again, I think the important part is when you look at the numbers, the number of beds and the number of units, every step of the way has been decreased. And that's been obviously part of the process of reducing the scale, mass, and size of the building overall. So then going into the October, which is the upper right-hand corner proposal, is where we started to look at different ways to break down the mass of the building and introduce some smaller scale elements. The 3-story, in that particular scheme, we had 3, 5, and 6-story schemes or 6-story elements within the building. So it was at that point where we really started to kind of look hard at the streetscape side of things and different ways to drop the building down in size. And then go into the lower left corner, there again, we were still at a 6-story building, but we did have some smaller elements that were along the 16th Avenue. And again, reducing unit size, reducing bed counts and so forth. And then in the December meeting is where we started to look at some more significant changes. This scheme is where we introduced the 3-story townhome elements that were on the 16th Avenue side. We took the other elements that were facing the corner and or wall deck down to 5 stories. And then the 6-story element was the bar building, as we had been referring to it, which is that northern section on the north property line facing the fraternity house. So then going into the January meeting, we further developed the December scheme, but we still had that 6-story bar in the back. And as a way, the consistent theme, through all these meetings was height and density, scale, mass. So then in this last scheme in the March, between January and March, most of the street front side of the building is consistent with what we had previously submitted. The townhomes that we're looking at in this particular view of 3 stories. Everything else around the corner and wall deck side has been reduced down to 5 stories. And in fact, the entire building, including the north bar, has been taken down to 5 stories. So where we originally started off with a 7-story building and 573 beds, we're down to basically a 3- and 5-story building at 313 beds, which is about 54% of where we started. So the building program has drastically been reduced. And the normal thought process there is if you're reducing the density of the unit, you're reducing the height, the scale, and everything else that goes along with that. So if we can maybe go back now to the original, because this is kind of where we started off, the March 8th, the lower right-hand corner, that's where we are today. But I think it's very important that we all understood the progression of the various different versions that we've gone through with this board. So I'm sorry, the actual.
I'm gonna try, and I mean, we know the history.
Yeah.
I think we've been there, and we have this just like kind of move the.
Yeah, if we can go to the current submittal, which is where we started with that page right there, page 3. I think that you all understand the site plan. Danny, if we get any questions on the site plan, I know you'll raise them.
Yeah.
But that's the footprint of the building.
In this last scheme, we did lose a little bit of the green space area. It went from 33 down to 25%. And that was a product of working through the townhome issues on the 16th Avenue side and introducing that circulation corridor to get the fair and reasonable access to those units as we further develop those. The remainder of the building footprint has pretty much stayed the same. You can go on to the next one now. So these are the impact shots. Obviously, we've spent a lot more time into the actual architecture, developing the model, and developing the building itself. All of these elements here are 5-story elements. The ground floor materialism. The ground floor materialism is a cast stone or cut concrete, whichever that works out. Brick in the 2, 3, and 4 version, and then going up to a panel siding type material on the upper floor going around. And then you can go ahead and skip to the next slide there. These are the townhomes. You know, this is one of the moves that we felt very significant about in terms of, you know, how to address the streetscape, how to address the scale of the building along the pedestrian side of the street, which is obviously 16. These are 3-story townhome type units with a walk-up front porch. Front porches are elevated so that they are similar to the townhomes to the east. That is a walk-up entry as well, so it looks and serves the same as what you see to the adjacent properties really any of the properties in the particular neighborhood. And then if you go to the next one, if you can go back one thing, you can kind of see over the right-hand side of our right-hand townhome is the building beyond, you know, the 5-story portion of the building beyond. If you remember, that was one of the conversations we had previously in terms of what you would see from the streetscape side of things. That if you go back to that, I'm not asking you to, but in that summary thing that we had here, we all just looked at, it's the exact same perspective, and you can see the 6-story is, and here you can see the 5-story just barely comes through in the imagery. And again, these are all accurate Revit-based models. These are the cameras that I view. So this is pretty accurate to what you would actually see. Okay, we can go to the next sheet. And then this is the northeast western corner. You know, the 2 overhead doors. The left one is the service garage door. The right one is the car vehicular access point. And then you can go to the next view, which is looking on the northern side of the property, that faces the fraternity house. We are showing a fence in there. I know it's a little hard to see because it's at the base level and it kind of blends in with the building itself a little bit. But there is a fence there now today. It will get destroyed during the construction process. So we would propose to put that back, you know, in a better form than what it's currently at. But and you can see here, one of the things that I think is important to point out, that from this particular view, which is at the parking lot of the fraternity, the building comes across as a 4-story building. When we look at the 2D elevations, you can see how the grade does slope down at the western side of that building where the brick portion of it is. But the body of the building, everything from that brick portion to the left as we're looking at it, is pretty much a 4 to 4.5-story building because of the way the grades work out and the fact that the garage is buried below. It's not completely below grade, but it's partially below grade on that side. And then I think if the elevations are next, the site sections, I think the plans, we kind of walked through this. You know, we did a little bit of changing a little bit of the graphics up a little bit because you know, we felt that just the one larger footprint size was being a little deceiving to how the building was. And then if you go to the next one, which I think is the typical floor plan, you can see how the townhomes are starting to relate to the actual amenity deck, the shape of the building. And, you know, we've kept it pretty consistent in terms of the shape because of the irregularity of the site. But we've been manipulating the unit types and of course the size of the building to try to keep, you know, some of the integrity of the program up to where it needs to be from a development standpoint. And then these are what our current thought is, you know, from an exterior material perspective. So intentionally going a little bit lighter on the bricks as opposed to more of a red or red brown type brick color, which you do see a lot within this area. So our thinking was to lighten it up a little bit and give it a little bit of a different flavor so that it's not so traditional in terms of the color scheme of things. You know, we didn't really necessarily want it to take on an institutional look, you know, and I tend to think with a lot of the red brick that's around everywhere, both off campus and on campus, it could start to look and feel that way. So we took it to a little bit of a lighter version than some of the other, since the majority of the buildings are within the area. And then the next page is what? This gets into the elevations. So you can see, you know, the ground floor level, the body of the building, and the floors 2, 3, and 4. And then how we've really tried to soften up the 5th floor, you know, with various different setback, different window configurations, a combination of some slope proof over the main elements and parapet walls on kind of the body part of the building. And then on the lower elevation to the right, you can see the relationship of how the new townhomes work alongside of the 5-story building that's a part of the overall development. And then the next page gets to the north and south side. You know, the north side is where is obviously, as we just talked about, facing the fraternity, and that grade is as existing grade, so it's not a modified grade in any way at this point in time. Truthfully, I don't think we can really modify too much of the grade because there's only so much distance between the building and the property line. So that grade line is basically at the property line. So you can see how the fence would take at least the majority of that look of the 5-story building out of the equation, other than at the very right-hand corner of the building. And then the south elevation, the townhomes, you know, we've spent a fair amount of time, you know, getting those to look good from a scale and proportion standpoint. You know, when we talked about, you know, this concept a while back, it wasn't necessarily, there was no intent ever to replicate or simulate the existing townhomes, other than scale and size. You know, but from an architectural speaking standpoint, we had no intent to try to get into that flavor of architecture to try to blend it in, other than scale, in terms of how it relates to the streetscape and the pedestrian scale of things. And then the site section, I do think this is fairly important. You know, going from left to right, you know, you can see the 16th Avenue side. You can see how the slab for the townhomes has been elevated slightly, you know, to get the walk-up scenario that we're after for the porches. The middle part is the amenity space, so you can see the relationship of the amenity deck to the building above. The amenity deck being the 2nd floor, townhomes being, you know, 3 and 4 story, I'm sorry, 2 and 3 stories above the podium, and then the 4 stories on top of the podium. And then I think what's important is the relationship between our building and the fraternity house. Distance-wise, that's off the map, so that distance between the buildings is accurate. The height of the building is also fairly accurate, and we didn't go out there and do any kind of survey into that. So we took kind of general information floor to floor to get to what we felt was an accurate representation of the mass of that particular building. But I think the important part is that there's not much difference between the height of our building on the north side and the height of the building north of ours, which is the fraternity.
I just want to add there in the background is also the elementary school, so you can almost see that,
yeah,
you know, height wise, it's very comparable.
Yeah. Yeah, the elementary school's got a lot of height, which you can see to the far right there. And then, you know,
our one question just on the height, because you put in here at 65 feet, and I'm curious, you dropped the whole floor, but we dropped 5 feet in height. And typically, I think 65 would be pretty high for a 5-story building.
Well, 2 things. The 65 is to the top of parapet, not necessarily to the top of roof deck. So we're taking that into the overall account of the height. And then we also had to increase the first floor, floor to floor elevation to sandwich some more parking in there because of the rack parking. So that did go up a little bit.
So are your residential floors
standard
9 feet?
Yeah.
So 60.
Yeah, so the first floor, and then taking into account the parapet height, you know, we wanted to get that included. So the 65 doesn't completely take into account the gable roof areas, but it takes into account like 75% of the gable roof area. And I believe you're allowed to go to the average anyway, so.
Carefully.
So we did that so that we made sure we were covered everywhere in terms of requesting that height. So I think that's it in terms of the architecturally. Tyler, you want to add anything? Oh, these letters?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, beyond architecture, we do have some support letters. I'm not sure if they were shared with you, but we did bring some copies and happy to share those with you guys.
Can you email those to me? I don't think I received them.
Yeah, no, yeah, you want a hard copy or just email copy?
Just email them to me.
Okay, does anybody, these are letters of support. This is GLS rentals.
Yes, we have the church, obviously, the adjacent duplex, and then a handful of fraternity sororities within the neighborhood.
I think if you email those in, being a conceptual review, you're not gonna be able to all review. Okay.
Any zoning variants?
We don't have any information on that. It's just strictly conceptual for everything.
What was the question?
I'm sorry, Ryan, I'll just say on that one point you raised, 65, top of parapet is not where the zoning code measures height. So for the zoning code, it would be lower on the citation. I wasn't aware at this moment
Yeah,
that.
I just think
65
that's one thing that will help the case is if you're more refined on that, because it does, I mean, I think dropping.
There are some feet in there that we could.
Yeah. And relative to, there are zoning variances, as you all know, but one of the things that Up Campus needs to get to with the review board is your approval or saying, yes, this works, run with this, develop this further. Because the zoning variances are in flux. Zoning variances fix what a project doesn't comply with. And right now I have a moving target.
Yep. So there you can see on the south elevation, the building beyond, the 5-story aspect of it in terms of how it relates to the 3-story piece. So I think overall, taking the building down to a 5-story building with the accent architectural buildings being the townhome buildings to address the streetscape side of things, I think was a pretty major move that we took away from our last meeting, that something more dramatic has to change here. And so that's probably the most significant thing in terms of overall reducing the height of the building everywhere.
I would say not only to Dave's point about the height, but I guess if there is some concern about, we're at 30% parking right now. If we have some flexibility and then dropping that would also help us compress the building even further with the height.
So one thing that I would bring up on that we learned from, and Dave, I wasn't aware of this, that we learned from a previous application, I think when you guys were here, maybe in January, was that with the city's new parking code, if you get a variance on parking, no resident is able to get a street parking pass. So I don't know if that to me was eye-opening because I've done a lot and I didn't recognize that affects this a lot. And it makes me feel a little bit better about giving parking variances because then it falls on you as a developer.
Yeah.
But we were shared that, Stephanie had sent that if you get any variance on any new property that residents cannot get street parking passes.
Any variance at all or just parking variance?
Parking variance. Yes. And so I just bring that up because it's a double-edged sword. It makes me feel better, but it also that I still feel very strongly that 0.3 on this is low for how many people will actually use cars, but then honestly, then it puts it into your burden of being able to lease units if they can't get street parking. So I bring that up.
Yeah.
There was one clarification on there is the one said 321, the one said 313.
So 313 is in the new development. The 321 includes the duplex that we're going to keep. Yep.
We'll open it up to.
I think I said the same thing last 5 times. I think it should go to the people.
Always there.
Oh, I mean.
Put the new guy on the spot.
You guys are the container ship. They are the tugboat. I'm just getting to the door and watching the whole thing go down. I think the townhomes are really nice. I really appreciate the scale of those and the way they break down the massing. I think it's interesting the way they connect with the amenity deck and the structured parking. Very clever. I kind of wish it just did the whole thing all the way around and then do whatever you want in the back, party in the back. So for me, I guess to put that more succinctly, I appreciate the way that you've carved out the massing. It doesn't look like whatever you call the Texas Donut anymore. That's great. So that's huge improvement. It's still those 5-story sections which seem rather harsh, facing Walnut in the corner. It just seems so, even with the cutouts into it, seems so unrelenting. And I know you're trying to get a lot of units in there, and that's got to be good for your pro forma, but I can see why we have a resident here who's objecting to it at the same time. So in the end, I'm conflicted. But I'm also not privy to the history of what's.
And I think part of that was my question, that render gives a sense like that upper level is a higher ceiling, drawing height even more in the first floor, I mean, I think as you guys study that for there, being able to bring down that height as much as possible on a 5-story build, I mean, it makes a difference there, so.
Yeah.
Well, as we just noted, everything, the floors 2, 3, 4, and 5 is standard residential 9-foot. So if there is any additional height, that's because of the elevation articulation.
I mean, that upper level in that rendering looks more than a standard height. And maybe that's a rendering issue, but.
Yeah, I mean, we did add extra glazing. That is an amenity space, like a featured moment at the focal point of enter the building. But I hear you in the rendering. It does perspective wise at least look taller.
Other comment?
Actually, I'm so struck by the adjective of unrelenting, which to me really does capture, I guess, what my major concern is, and height aside, in terms of just the overall mass, the impact it has on the area. And I know you had some letters that sounded like they were from maybe institutional sources. It would be interesting to know if you have contacted residents, property owners like Mr. Singleton, and had any input from them in terms of planning this. Obviously, there's plenty of time in planning, but it'd be interesting to know in turn as you bring up the issue of support, the opinion of other property owners in the area.
Well, there are letters from nearby property owners. Mr. Singleton lives on Adams Avenue.
I guess my question was about the overall, efforts to contact and get input from property owners rather than the numbers of letters. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's not about the quantity of letters. Certainly, it's about. I mean, we've been reaching out for the past.
It's about the attention paid to the neighborhood, which is a concern. It came up at the preliminary discussion with at the University Area Commission, and I think it's something to I would advise you to be concerned with in terms of future presentations.
In terms of what, again, starts Tim, I'm sorry.
Simply to hear from more property owners in the area.
I mean, I spent 4 hours out there today, just walking around, and I mean, you just walk around, it's constant, just students. I mean, I went and knocked on 20 doors, it was all students. So, I mean, we tried, and that's what we're making the efforts to try to hear the neighborhood people. And the neighborhood people are the students.
I'm just, Tim, I'm just gonna, I won't read the letters, but I'm just gonna read into the record. Alpha Xi Delta, 76 East 15th. Kappa Delta, 116 East 15th. Can't read that name. You read that? 121 East 16th, Evans Scholars, 1943 Waldeck Avenue. These are all clues.
1962 Iuka.
Oh, you asked if there's anything else. Attorney, just very briefly to the point that's come up a couple times. Have you addressed the concerns that, or are you, what's your reaction to the concerns that have been expressed for the spaces between the townhouses? Those narrow spaces, which have a couple times been mentioned in terms of safety factors.
Well, those would be secured. I mean, I think last time we talked about it, because I think KB brought that up a couple meetings ago. And the space between the buildings really isn't any different than the spaces between any of the other buildings within that neighborhood. You know, we would propose that we would have a ornamental wrought iron gate fence type of thing that's at the front of the building, or, you know, maybe 5-10 feet back, something like that.
So I guess the answer to the question is yes, you're addressing that issue.
We would secure those off. We would have the appropriate lighting.
That condition occurs all the time in neighborhoods like Sherman Village or the Brewery District. I would not be concerned.
Did you have anything?
No, that's,
When we were kind of going over this conceptually, you had mentioned that the goal was never to try and blend in, but was to kind of make your own statement with the apartment buildings. And I think that that's okay in certain situations, and I do like that you added an elevation onto the porch. So that way, you know, you can be at a little bit of a higher level. I appreciate that you added a couple lighting features on the design. I think something that I'm kind of getting stuck on is that when you're wanting to stand out in a space, it needs to tell some sort of story. And I'm not really seeing a story that I think really like kind of provides some sort of conversation piece that elevates the community. I think it's high, that's for sure. But I'm just wondering, like, would you want it to necessarily stick out by not going with, you had mentioned like the red brick, you're kind of trying to stay away from it. I don't know if I would necessarily do that within this structure of those apartments, just because to me, it doesn't really seem like something that is forward in design. In a sense of, you know, providing more of a statement, if that makes sense. It just, to me, like the colors that you chose for the larger building, where, you know, it kind of like meets at that, you know, just kind of seeing the fact that like, to me, it just seems very barren. And I don't know if that's because of the colors that were chosen, but it doesn't necessarily like blend in because of the fact that also like, are there, I can't remember, but off of this new design, are there any trees that are able to be salvageable? I'm sorry, I couldn't remember from the last time.
No, our proposal would be to do all new street trees.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if we have these trees that are, you know, gonna be baby trees, you know, and then we're looking at this building, how can it kind of give that illusion that it isn't as big? So, you know, can you play with color? Can you play with texture? And that would be, in my opinion, based on the design of this, is that it doesn't necessarily blend in a way, and it also doesn't necessarily stick out in a way that I think it should. If that's enough context on that.
So just curious about the height. I mean, are you now more comfortable? But like if well, we can continue to refine the architecture, and that's our goal moving forward. We're looking for kind of more of a blessing of really just like the more, I guess, more zoning related, where it's more parking height density, and you know, we did take I believe a big leap here in the last 2 months architecturally. So you know, there's still continue a path here forward that we can continue to look at it further.
Yeah, I think it's still, for me, it doesn't serve enough of a purpose for it to be as that height, just based on the design of it. If you could give me more of a, yes, that looks great there, then I would be more inclined to give you the height. But, based off of the designs that you have here, I would not provide you with that variance for the height.
But what would change your mind though in the design?
I think, that's something that you're gonna have to play around with, which it sounds like you all have been super patient, and I appreciate seeing like the progression of it. But I can't exactly tell you that part, but I just know that from what I'm seeing right here, this doesn't look like, something that I think would provide, what am I trying to say?
It would provide a positive solution.
Yes, thank you.
A favorable outcome.
Thank you, Lori.
So, I missed, I think one of the presentations that you came back in, on, I apologize for that, I was out of town. I am excited about how, as we come around 16th, could you go back, like, I think maybe 2 or 3 slides to the townhouse image. There we go. So really appreciate the fact that we're having townhouses marching down the 16th Avenue. Is the articulation great on those? It's not, it's not my favorite design, but I really enjoy the porch elements. I agree, German Village, my office is down in the Village, and that type of condition happens. You gate it off, you light it, and it's something that's, is an operational thing that you can manage. As I move around the building, which you'd have to go up 1 slide, this is what we see as we're coming in off of High Street. We're coming up into the neighborhood. It feels really big. For me, it's an extrusion. I enjoy the fact that there's almost like a portico that happens in the front, but it's pretty much an articulation that is extruded. I also enjoy the fact that there's some relief with a porch element or a balcony element in the center. And I also agree that that top story just feels really tall. I don't know what it is. It's probably because it's floor to ceiling glass is my guess.
Yeah.
So it just feels like it's 2 stories, just because it's, you would assume that a top level would have a smaller articulated window. And this is kind of giving the opposite effect, which you would see probably at the Junto or someplace downtown, right, as a hotel. As I'm moving up Waldeck, again, to Daniel's sort of comment, we do have some more articulation here, which I really appreciate, but it's still an extrusion, which really makes it difficult when you're looking at it from the street side to not see it as a really big building. And I wonder if there's a way to somehow do some step backs for floor level to help reduce sort of the mass that you're seeing from the street. However, you did exactly what I asked. The views that you gave from the street level where the townhouses are, you're absolutely right. You don't prospectively see a taller building behind it, right? So that's exactly the message that you need to say, that this is being articulated well, and because of the perspective view, you don't see the taller building at the back. I would also argue that from your section view, where you look, is it that one? Yes, with the building that's the fraternity house. Now it feels like it's in, it's in an acceptable height limit there. I would say the way you articulate that facade, however, if you go to that elevation, that it feels very institutional, almost like we're in an educational building. I think there's another perspective rendering that might explain it a little bit better right there. It feels like it belongs on campus instead of in a residential neighborhood. So I still think we need to pay attention. It's not a throwaway facade for me. Even though it is the parking lot that's facing it, you still will be able to see this from all that. So those are my comments. Parking, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was a meeting I missed. I didn't realize that was coming out. I know a lot of the students are using anything from scooters to motorized bikes to skateboards to, you know, you name it, to get through the neighborhood. As long as you accommodate more of that type of parking for the students, I can be more forgiving on the parking. It is still really big. I've always felt that this was really too big for the site and for the neighborhood. But I think if you can continue to develop the architecture in a way that can support the massing strategy of the neighborhood, I think we can move this thing forward.
If I can add just to the parking, we will have like on-site shared parking, 2 cars available, as well as on the exterior, we would provide public, you know, shared parking that we're gonna work with the city on. And then on the inside, we'll, you know, for the tenants, they would have secure bike storage. So there would be multiple modes of transportation available.
Keone, you,
I mean,
Say it again.
yeah, I mean, I think I was okay with the previous version, so I think the reduction of 5 stories is, I'm fine with it. I mean, I think from my perspective, you completed your end of the bargain, have the duplex on the end, and the rest of the development is acceptable. I think I would agree largely with what Lori said, that I think it would benefit you to think a little bit about how to articulate the building and treat it. I feel like I wonder if there's not a way of treating the things in front more as pavilions and allowing the stuff behind to recede that might help break up the mass. The big mass of beige, like the tripartite scheme with cast dome, with 3 stories of beige, on green, might not be working for you. You might be better off if it was that and with something that receded and that. There might be another way of breaking up the scheme and I think making it feel less massive and relentless, as Dan said. John, I mean, these are old references, but look at like Michael Graves or Aldo Rossi or Monotna, a new Dutch firm. But like, you could almost do with less architectural articulation, but sort of in the same way that the townhouses read as individual units where there's relief between them, like try to get this part, like it's scaled up, but if that reads as a thing, but then there's an architectural hyphen between it so that the apparent visual mass of the thing starts to break up, it might help.
Keone, I wonder if those townhomes are signaling that they're residential, but the rest of it sort of signals that it's not so expressly private residential. So like I'm looking at your Texas Donut image, the perspective, and actually stylistically, it's kind of nice. It makes sense. It looks more like a warehouse building. So I wonder if the townhomes are residential stuff and all the way around is more of that. You could say industrial or warehouse or even like mid-century schoolhouse style going the rest of the way around, because I actually think your rendering of that image is actually quite nice. Whereas the other stuff, the unrelenting stuff, is going for like pumped up residential, and it just doesn't connect to the neighborhood.
Yeah, the renderings, the accents.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even these maybe because they're earlier, but like you read more of that and there's relief, and then that and it's really like.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 center fingers are kind of like all the same right now, so maybe there's some architectural variation.
I would like saying I asked for the architects on board too. I like to play architect, but not an architect. But like to me, the gable roofs and all that, like on this size building, it makes it feel taller. It's that like I think to maybe to your point, shrink it down, let it be what it is. The residential's that 16. Anything you can do to bring the height down, it's gonna feel better. I agree with Keone. I mean, I appreciate the bringing it down to the 4-story residential over that. I think always for me, it's been that there has to be some step of progression, and what was done within the code was 72 feet on High Street as you step back. it went to 35. That was not some magic number, right? And I think this is, as you shrink that, that's why I've been focused on that 65. And there is a step back, a progression. Not every step back from High Street is the same. Some areas of High Street get into residential sooner than others. Dave's very, very familiar with Ninth Avenue and what was done there with Lumen. This board, kind of said, hey, we can see this height, there's gateway around there. So there is precedence, for that height to step further into the neighborhood, whether everyone likes it or not. And so I'm fine with that now saying, hey, 4 over in this area is good. It's how you articulate it and make that scale come down. It does look in this that I think we moved a little bit further into the backyard of the thing to keep our unit count and bed count. And I'm generally fine with that. The amount of lot coverage you cover in there, I don't think that really matters. Because I think between this and the other one, the unit counts or the bed counts were pretty much the same. The unit counts were there. So you've worked some magic moving around, that's fine. So for me, that's it. To give you guys direction, I'm fine with the 4 over. I think it's how you treat that part to bring it down that's going to be important. And I've said my piece on the parking. So
You had to recuse yourself from the last half and say at 0.1.
well, I was well aware.
Your point is so good about how this version calls more attention to that top floor. And I'm thinking about your building, John, Makeley Place, where maybe to the opposite extreme on the top floor, you have minimized attention to that. Somewhere in between may be a solution.
And we did do that last time that was a unit, and we kind of wanted to draw, I guess, more activity to the street frontage, but maybe that was the wrong move. I mean, we could relocate that and flip some parts and pieces around.
Yeah.
Ryan, is there a height number? I'm just gonna ask.
No, it's not.
There's a 5 in front of the height.
No. There's no. I'm not opposed to like 65 or anything. Like I'm just saying. To me, it's like, hey, we're offering this. Don't say I'm going to do 10-foot ceilings on every floor and I'm going to do a 20-foot floor on this. Is just be conscious of that. That hey, that is the thing. So if we can do something to keep that down, and to Dave's point about how you measure it, there are different ways, and it's going to be on the average grade along here, and so. There is no magic number. It's just be conscious as you're looking at the architecture and what you're doing and how you're doing that. I really think getting rid of the gable and all that to simplify that roof line is going to bring this building down a lot.
I would just concur with Lori on that back facade needs some work. It's a little rough.
Yeah, one thing that's hurting a little bit is there's no balconies. And the student housing world's a little bit different than the market rate in terms of how you address that. But that does eliminate some relief that you would normally have in a multifamily unit or building rather. But yeah, I mean, we started to make some articulation there with those 3 elements in the middle, just trying to break that up, doing a little bit of pop outs, in the facade itself to try to just so it's not a flat facade. And then we did intentionally try to create a little bit more windows there. So
Again, I feel like maybe if it changed material or something,
Yeah.
I think
I agree.
I feel like the relative uniformity of materials not helping you in terms of the perception of both. I think Ryan's reference of Lumen's a good one. Like if you see how they broke down both the building, the kind of vertical elements, they did a nice job.
I think that one was 4, right?
It was 6. I feel like 5.
5, yeah.
Yeah, that was 5-story.
Yeah, so it's similar in there. I mean, they're and
So what I think I'm hearing. So always the danger part, right? But what I think I'm hearing is that this whole conversation is really more about the articulation, the colors, the material, and in different architectural ways to kind of break down the massiness, but it's not so much the mass of the structure itself or the height is what I'm hearing.
With some modifications that we'll continue to dig into, and the gables along wall deck or something, maybe some unnecessary height that we've added, but.
My advice to you is ask explicitly. I'll try and help you by telling you where I stand. I'm good with the bulk and the mass. I'm good with the height. I think for me, it's pretty much just refinement in terms of design and articulation. Yeah.
So more material is the,
Yeah. But yeah, you might want to see where other people stand.
well, that's what I thought I'm hearing, so I appreciate you being pointedly clear on that. Is that kind of where everybody else is standing?
I concur.
I think I've been pretty clear.
I agree. I would spend a lot of time on that centerpiece looking at. I think that's
Really important.
if you can figure that thing out, you can figure the whole thing out.
Well, it is very traditional in scale and proportion, without a doubt. The column sizes and the portico piece there, I mean, it is, spot on to architectural standard practices, but I understand what you're saying.
But I think what you're saying is that might not be the architectural
Yeah,
practice
right.
that we want, that columns are gonna make it look bigger, that like all that.
To be honest, I mean, Dan, our lead designer on this, I mean, he is very much a traditional architect and he is scale and proportion correct. But we did have a long conversation internally about how to treat that first floor, and if you remember the previous elevation, there was a band kind of going across there, and it was just a little too harsh. So we did intentionally kind of change that a little bit, but it does also make it look a little taller because of the way the columns are detailed. But yet those columns are architecturally correct, based upon the height and stuff. So, but that's not to say we can't bring that down a little bit. I mean, obviously the floor to floor height is a little bit taller on that first floor, so we are trying to maximize the glass. That centerpiece is the main entryway. So there again, the transparency at that main entryway is important. So.
I think all those things.
I asked Tim and Emma, are you generally in agreement on that? Colors, articulation, materials?
Yeah, that was my comment from the very beginning, but I can't really say anything about the height just yet because I'm not really there with just the design of the building. So I can't really say whether I would vote yes or no based on the height, just with the drawings that have been presented.
Okay, thank you.
I feel very much, agree with you. Yes.
Which is what, I'm sorry, Tim?
Oh, I think also, I'm not sure that I can give you full support, but as you said, I think there are some things happening here that may begin to mitigate the unrelenting, once again, to use that word, character. It's still very big.
But I did like that you started door knocking and stuff. I think that that's good because you don't want the neighborhood to not welcome this structure. So, continue having those
Yeah,
conversations.
it's not over, definitely.
Yeah, you want it to be at least that they welcome in and, not the other way.
Absolutely. Just as far as from a footprint bigness conversation, we're at 25% as far as the open space, which is not too far off from where it is today. We were, the 30 to 33% is more consistent with where the church building is today in terms of what it and its parking lot covers on the ground standpoint, as far as like an impervious material. So that has been one of the drivers for us in terms of trying to not cover the site with any more impervious material than what's there today. And we're pretty darn close.
You haven't kept any existing tree that is on the lot. And I think that that's important to note. So I think that that's a really big deal. And if you're gonna be at 25%, I need to see something that makes me want to say, okay, cool, it's worth taking those out. Because right now I would not vote yes on this.
And we had those early conversations about keeping the big tree, the mature tree versus the duplex, and that felt like the majority was keep the duplex.
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, I understand what you're saying about retaining the trees, but at the same time, our proposal would be putting more trees in than what's there today. And they would be more consistent. They would be street trees that would be in alignment, evenly spaced, so on and so forth. So looking down the road, yeah, there's mature trees there now, but this proposal would improve the trees in a long-term perspective.
Are there any other?
Just one thing to double check for me, you all know there's no church there now, right?
Mhm.
I mean, the real estate is owned by the Summit Methodist Church, but there's no church. They've moved on. They merged with a church in North Linden. So this is an empty building.
It's irrelevant for that.
Not really, Keone, because there's been some suggestion of kind of displacing the church and that type of stuff. So
Yeah,
this is real estate is all it is.
it's irrelevant. I mean, from my perspective, it doesn't matter. I'm not.
Oh, doesn't matter. Okay.
This is about bulk mass height.
Yeah, I agree.
Finishes. Don't care who's there.
Yeah. And you have up campus as a developer who's committed to preserving from the demolition of the building, the items that you've all talked about multiple times, the architectural items of the particular room in the building. So,
The plan is to try to donate those, work with an affiliate that would showcase those.
One other thing that I may note, and I don't know how to, I think you were bringing up the open space, and a number 2533 means nothing in there. I think as this progresses, and I think you've done a great job here providing better images, I think that landscaping can do a lot to bring down scale, but also create that streetscape. And the more you could speak to that, because I was a big proponent of keeping that consistency, not trying to build around a tree. So I am supportive of, hey, let's look at this fresh. I mean, the trees are trees there, but it's more important to create a consistency of setbacks, landscaping, all of that. And so that setbacks to the buildings that are adjacent, how you're landscaping it is important. So that, as you do that, that's going to be even more important on these next rounds.
Yeah, our setbacks are consistent with, with what's in the adjacent area. You can kind of see where we've ghosted in the trees that would be there.
Yeah.
And then if you go to the other.
And I'm just gonna make it even a comment, like a lot of times what we see is, hey, improve
Make it
this, and we'll
bigger.
get landscaping to you later. And like, I think those are gonna go hand in hand, where some developments is like, okay, landscape can be later, because it's, if it's on High Street, it's street trees and tree grates, there's not much to it. What you do with the landscape is gonna be an integral part of the building.
It is.
So those can't be an afterthought, is it?
No, and you can see, we started that integrated.
I'm saying, I'm just giving advice of how to.
Sure. No, I appreciate that.
Can we go back to that facade that you just had up with the garage doors? This is always something I struggle with on all the different commissions that I'm on, is that we're in this urban neighborhood and we present a suburban garage door. It's always a struggle for me to see that. I don't know that what the solution is.
Those are glass. I don't know.
Say again?
Those are glass garage doors. I don't know if it just doesn't read that well, but
Yeah.
that's what we're proposing.
Glass could help. I think just how it's articulated perhaps could help. I've seen where they will do a false wall in front of that. It's almost like a garden wall that you drive through and then you get to the garage door, that you don't note it as a garage door. You see more of it is beyond. So that's one condition that could be improved, in my opinion. It's just, for me, in an urban context and see a suburban garage door, it always gets me.
I think where you bring up a point, and I don't know if this is, and I don't know if it's even possible, but like part of that is that's a big garage door, because you're talking to, like, is there a way of breaking that down into two individuals? So it's not this hit you in the face, a center column, it's an in and an out, and they're just, I don't know if that helps or hurt, but it's just like,
Right, it potentially could. The one on the left is for, trash and loading.
yeah, but that one's smaller to begin with, like, I just think it's something.
Those are all just a tidbit. Just one of those things. Do you have enough to go on with what we've discussed?
Well, that's what I was just thinking, because again, it kind of goes back to what I think I'm hearing is it's more about the articulation of materialism than the actual physical
Don't forget about
Layout.
landscape, don't forget, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
I
or
think it
chatting
would.
with local artists to see about murals, if you have that big canvas, that could be a swing.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that in multiple developments. I mean, it's something that we can look into. There's plenty of great artists around here, so.
Yeah,
You know,
there are for sure.
And I think it was, whether it was Keone or whoever brought this up, I mean, you understand you have to get 4.
Yeah.
Right? You're not, you know, you don't have to get everything, you know, that's hopeful. So John, you know, to your question, I mean, I think you've heard from us. You know, I don't think we're gonna say yes, yes, no, we're not going to do that today, but I think you should have enough of where everyone stands.
Well, that's what I was trying to draw, the continuity to what the main issue is, and it does seem like it's the materialism and different ways to articulate the building and break up the materials and colors, so that it maybe not quite so monolithic at that 16th corner, 16th and Waldeck area.
Steph, what's the next due date?
Just tomorrow.
Tomorrow. That's what I'm afraid we're gonna hear.
No, even if it was tomorrow, it wouldn't be tomorrow for you all, it'd be good next week.
5 all-nighters.
Just as long as it's done before the eclipse.
Yeah.
Got a lot to do in a week, John.
Yeah.
I'd say next Friday.
A week from tomorrow.
I have one, I spoke to Stephanie in advance that I.
Next try.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate
Yeah,
the
thanks,
time.
everybody.
Everybody else, though, we need to do the staff reports.
Yes. For the staff, I don't need to read each one in the record. Is there anything?
So unless anyone has any questions, they're pretty, we have heard more this month than we've had the last few months, but we have 2 that are HRC concurrent, basically, the, you know, dual jurisdiction with HRC, and they reviewed and we're okay with it, so that's the first 2. That mural looks by McDonald's on High Street, windows, and then the last 2 are space. I can pull any of them up if there's any specific questions, but.
I look for the slide.
I thought they were going to.
Do we need a motion to approve?
I move to approve, staff approved applications.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion by Ms. Engelmann, seconded by Mr. Mather. Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Engelmann,
Yes.
Ms. Parker. Yes. Someone is still getting those here. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
And Mr. Mather.
Yes.
Motion carries. That.
With that,
Stand adjourned.
we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank
Do
you.
you need these speaking?